Hi, this is Doc. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's think about this. And this is a continuation of our capstone series, and specifically R&D. And I guess the question is, and I have this question all the time in my classes, is what happens when the R&D decisions go beyond the age of revision date? So I'm going to share my screen and walk you guys through that. And it's pretty interesting, and this is from our last presentation where we actually calculated the location where we needed to have our acre product, which is a low-end product in this particular marketplace, which is the low-end segment, and we've actually moved it into the ideal position at the end of the year, which in this particular case will be the end of the year 2020. So we've actually looked at what type of quality we needed for mean time before failure. And in addition to that, we decided that we were going to work within the parameters of that quality specification from the customer buying criteria in that particular year. And specifically, for the low-end marketplace, in our conditions report, our initial conditions report, we see that we have this range up to 17,000 units or average hours before mean time before failure. Now, what if we were in a little bit more of a difficult position, or we we needed to put more R&D into our product to get it up to market? So, for instance, let's take on the high-end product. And let's take on a high-end product because initially the high-end product is very interesting in itself in terms of position and where it needs to be in the marketplace. So, for example, as I'm scrolling through the customer buying criteria for the high-end product, it's a high-end customer segment, and what this product is about new, faster, smaller products or sensors or whatever you want to define what those products are. And what that means is that in this particular marketplace, the customer wants cutting edge product. They don't want things that are over a year old. So basically, you have to forecast extremely well on this product and get all your product out the door. So as we look at this in terms of let's position our product in the ideal spot in the marketplace for the end of that round, we see that if we go back to our center segments, which is at the top of the conditions report, and we look at this high-end segment, which is the third double column down. So here we have a performance of 8.4 and 11.6 for size. So that's 8.4 and 11.6 for size. And the ideal spot for the calculations from the center spot to the ideal spot is an addition of 1.4 on performance, 1.4 to our 8.4, which gives us 9.6, and a subtraction in size of our 11.6 at the end of the round, which is a subtraction of negative 1.4. Again, as I said in my previous video, it's easier to calculate these ideal spots by looking at the center spots at the end of the round and then making your calculations. So as we move that back into the atom, putting in the performance and the size coordinates, we see that it's 9.6 is what I calculated. So 9.6, and we calculated that this is 10.2 as far as size. Now, if we are correct, we should see, before I hit recalculation, we should see that the ideal spot in our conditions report should be somewhere in this area. And let's calculate and see where that ends up taking us. So the interesting thing is that, oh, that's where our ideal spot is. But here is the problem, and this goes back to our original question, R&D decisions that go beyond the age of revision, or I'm sorry, the revision date. So for example, this scaffolding information says the date the project will be complete. Now, until this date, the product's produced within its original original specifications. And then after the date, the product's produced with the new specifications. Now, there's a thing about this that's interesting, is that if you think about this, and I know we always use a Ford Explorer as an example in our capstone analogies. If you think about this, if Ford had a 2018 Ford Explorer, and they were actually trying to calculate on a more advanced Ford Explorer, it means that they want to have more features, more quality, kind of like that high-end marketplace inside of Capsim. And they decided to put a lot more R&D in. So comparable to our low-end marketplace, you see the R&D costs about $750,000. This is over $1 million. And the age of revision date is also an issue because with our industry conditions report, and we look at that high-end marketplace, we see that the customer buying criteria wants something that's a year or less, right? Not anything over a year, but that's an issue. So it is looking for something that's an age at about 0, and the ideal position is very, very important to the buying decision. Both of these combined are somewhere around 72% of the buying criteria. So we have to get both of these right. But the problem is and we haven't even decided about doing anything with the quality of this product. The product is that this product is so far behind the marketplace that if we put it in a marketplace, we will be locked out of making these decisions for the next round. Again, with the Ford Explorer, if we put enough, tool it up in a way to give it extremely more quality, it might be in the production or quality phase of production for over a year. So if it takes a year and a half for us to initialize this revision of the production line and the quality side of it, it's obvious that you won't be able to change it in mid development or R&D as you're putting and upgrading the production lines and the R&D. Same principle applies here. So what's the solution? That'll be in another video. But I can tell you one thing is that if you put in enough of the coordinates experimentally to get it as close to December the 31st, then you'll still be able to make those corrections or make that additional R&D in the following year. That's a strategy, right? Because you could also put it so far into the future, maybe 2 years in the future, where once it comes out of R&D, it'll be in the ideal spot, not next year, but the following year. That's another strategy. And both those strategies are some things that you have to talk to your team about. But just for the sake of argument, for the remainder of this particular video, if we want to at least keep enough of the R&D in this year as much as possible without going into a revision date that would take us out and lock us out in the following year, I'd say this is where you come in and do a little bit of experimentation, right? You would probably want to move this a little bit further back, and I'm guessing about 8.5, maybe 11 as far as the coordinates, and this is a guess, 8.5 and 11 is the coordinates. And what I'm looking for is to keep this in the year of next year. So that's July 2020. So that actually is not bad, but that means that for the next 6 months, in July to December of 2020, we can actually push this product in terms of R&D, in terms of, and when I say R&D, in terms of initiating more performance and size in this product, and just keep it under December the 31st, then we'll get it closer to the ideal spot for the first round. Not in the ideal spot, but we can move it closer to the spot. So in other words, I put enough functionality in my Ford that although I don't want the Ford I want for 2021, I get the Ford that I have in 2020 that has enough R&D put in. And so, again, I'm just kind of guessing a little bit here. I'm probably going to move this to about right here, about 9.5 and maybe about 11. Let's see how that works out. Maybe 9.2 or something like that. So right now we're at 23rd of July 2020 in terms of our revision date. Now we're moving a little bit closer to October. Are we in the ideal spot for the next round? No. Are we closer to the ideal spot in the next round without going over so that we can actually make some additional R&D investments in the next round? Yes. And you can continue to play with that a little bit more just to get it as close as possible. If I'm assuming if I make this a little smaller to 10.5 and then maybe move the performance a little bit, make it perform a little bit better. So shrink it a little bit, the size of the product, maybe the performance a little bit better. I'm just going to go 9.4. Again, not exact, because I can actually calculate the exact ideal spot for the round, but it's just too far into the future. Oh, look at that. Closer to the ideal spot, a month or two into 2020, which means we'll be locked out, but I can actually move it back a little bit, increase the size a little bit to maybe 6, and move the performance functionality back as well to maybe 3. And what I'm trying to achieve is to really get it to December the 31st. And so let's see how that works out. 13 days into January. Oh, poor product, poor product. Let's make the size a little bit bigger. Maybe that'll get us into December 31st. But you see the logic behind this. The logic is, December the 23rd. And look at this. Now, originally, we had this product about right here. The ideal spot is a few months into 2020, but at least from a competitive advantage standpoint, and my team has not decided what we want to do to either get it into the ideal position or we decide to take this position, which is put enough functionality, enough R&D and quality into the product to get it up to as far in the revision date as possible, and then we'll decide to make another decision or dance another day and another decision inside of another product space or within this particular same product in this same marketplace. Okay, I know that was a little bit complicated, but we'll have some more videos that talk about the ramifications of how do you get out of this cycle of just moving it up to the end of the revision date. Again, this is Doc. As you probably know, the double doc. So a PhD in Organizational Development and pursuing a PhD in Learning Sciences. And just reminding you to remember to think about things before you act.